Good afternoon and welcome to a special New Year's Eve edition of the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price, and this is our 2025 Year in Review. In 2025, we elected an American Pope, rescued stranded astronauts, and inaugurated President Trump for a second time. 2025 was the year of Operation Rising Lion, Operation Midnight Hammer, and Zohran Mamdani. There were drug boat raids in the Caribbean, fires in California, and floods in Central Texas. 2025 was the year of the Trump tariffs, DOGE cuts, and ICE raids. In 2025, AI took off. The war in Gaza ended, and so too did the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. In 2025, we said goodbye to a former president, a pope, and an influential podcaster by the name of Charlie Kirk. So, with that introduction in hand, let's take a look back at the stories and events that shaped our lives in 2025.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
The golden age of America begins right now.
The 39th President of the United States has died.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
Crowds slowly returning to Bourbon Street for the first time since the tragic New Year's Day attack.
This is like nothing we've ever seen, with multiple fires raging.
All of it gone. I mean, it's overwhelming.
It's truly an apocalyptic scene.
Over 1,000 homes burned in the Palisades.
Heartbreak in the nation's capital.
A passenger plane collided with a military helicopter.
The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors.
For the second time, the Vince Lombardi Trophy is headed to Philadelphia. Eagles fly in Super Bowl 59.
Elon Musk's DOGE.
The Department of Government Efficiency.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
For all intents and purposes, DOGE is done.
What's happened with DOGE?
DOGE is dead.
President Trump is threatening a massive increase in tariffs on China.
It's our declaration of economic independence.
Canada's not for sale. It never will be for sale.
The tariff on Canada is a tax on Americans.
Some really fantastic news from out of this world.
That's why just Falcon 9 touches down. A small step in the long journey to bring 2 astronauts home.
Can you rescue the astronauts?
Yes, we're bringing them back in 2 weeks.
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't have. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
Alex Ovechkin has done it. He surpasses the great one, Wayne Gretzky.
Somber news from the Vatican. Pope Francis has died.
Habemus Papam.
Pope Leo XIV, that is the name.
Many people thought this extraordinary moment would never happen.
Well, he's our guy.
Yeah, it's true.
An American, now the leader of the world's Catholics for the first time.
Suspected terror attack in Boulder, Colorado.
The subject used a makeshift flamethrower.
Unrest in Los Angeles.
Violent confrontations between protesters and federal agents.
When ICE went in, they just took people away. We are doing our targeted enforcement operations against criminal illegal aliens.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion.
Last night on the President's orders, U.S. Central Command executed Operation Midnight Hammer.
This was the right call at the right time.
We're not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program.
Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated.
The Florida Panthers win their second consecutive Stanley Cup.
The Thunder have taken the NBA by storm. For the first time, the NBA champion resides in Oklahoma City. The storybook season is complete.
It's a first for New York State.
The Medical Aid in Dying Act
death with dignity.
Assisted suicide.
Assisted suicide is not health care.
Arson at the Pennsylvania governor's residence.
Cody Balmer told police he was looking for Governor Josh Shapiro.
I think it's important in this time of rising political violence, none of us grow numb to it.
This is quite an American moment. Both parties are quite confident this photo op is going to be political nitroglycerin for them in 2026.
The one big, beautiful bill.
Deadly storms have swept across central Texas.
The devastating floods in the Hill Country.
Everything was gone. It was fun. They were got washed away.
At Camp Mystic in Texas.
From Alaska, a high-stakes moment.
Vladimir Putin just now emerging from the plane there and coming down the stairs.
Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. No, I'll get a little heat on that one.
Sad news to pass along from baseball. Bob Uecker,
just a bit outside.
one of the game's great personalities, died at the age of 90. Sad news out of the boxing world. George Foreman has passed away.
A cloud of suspicion surrounds the death of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman.
You figured it out yet? What's that? Who's the best pilot?
Val Kilmer took on iconic roles from Iceman to Batman.
British rock star Ozzy Osbourne. Wrestling legend Hulk Hogan.
Televangelist Jimmy Swaggart has died.
The founder of Focus on the Family, Dr. James Dobson.
I grew up listening to Dr. Dobson.
Dobson will be remembered as a champion for family values.
This just in, a well-known pastor in Southern California has passed away, John MacArthur.
Robert Redford was one of the greatest names in Hollywood.
Robert Redford is in more of my favorite movies than any other actor.
Breaking news out of Hollywood, Oscar-winning actress Diane Keaton has died.
I believe you're looking at the next Vice President of the United States.
There had never been a vice president quite like Dick Cheney.
Active shooter at the Charlie Kirk event.
I'm still shaking. I love Charlie Kirk. He's awesome.
The manhunt continues for the person responsible.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
We have a name to tell you, Tyler Robinson.
The movement my husband built will not die. I refuse to let that happen.
It was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
To beat the champ, you gotta knock him out. The Dodgers stand tall and win back-to-back titles.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are only hours away from a government shutdown.
We're just simply trying to get the government open.
People are in crisis.
There's a better way to do this.
The government can reopen tomorrow.
Tonight, the breakthrough.
We're going to be opening up our country.
Democrats didn't get anything really from this deal.
We have ended the war in Gaza.
We're going to have to do a lot of work to make sure that it stays ended.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
I am here with the mayor-elect of New York City, Zohran Mamdani.
New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change.
I have friends of mine in New York. They are officially depressed and scared.
We've got a socialist, anti-Semite, pro-Hamas guy as mayor of New York.
U.S. forces launched a precision strike against a vessel from Venezuela.
If you're working for a designated terrorist organization and you bring drugs to this country in a boat, we will find you and we will sink you.
And the person of the year for 2025, the architects of AI.
A new look at Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein.
Hollywood mourning the loss of legendary film director Rob Reiner.
There is a stain on our soul. A Hanukkah event here at Bondi Beach. The father and son terror team targeting the Jewish community.
Charlie Kirk's martyrdom is igniting an undeniable Jesus revival.
On the cross, our Savior said, Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. That man, that young man, I forgive him.
if you're just joining us, this is our 2025 Year in Review, special edition of the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price, and we're setting aside our regular programming today so we can spotlight the stories and events that shaped our lives the past 12 months. Recently, the Family Life News team got together in studio to talk about what we thought were the 5 biggest news stories of 2025. Here's some of that conversation. All right, well, hey, guys, welcome back. It's our year-end review special edition of the Noon Report. I'm Bob Price, and joined in studio by afternoon anchor Sarah Harnish, Martha Manikas-Foster, Mark Webster, and Jeremy Miller. Trust you all had a happy Christmas. Santa brought you everything you wanted, even a few things you didn't want. So we are counting down our top stories of the year, and I will just get the ball rolling by mentioning mine. I had the Pacific Palisades fire as the 5th biggest story of the year. Happened just 7 days into 2025, Southern California. $25 billion disaster, one of the most destructive in U.S. history. The Pacific Palisades fire was my 5th biggest story of the year. Let's go to Mark Webster. Mark, what did you have on your list?
Well, number 5, Bob, I have Donald Trump 2.0. The Donald being sworn into office for the second time this January is arguably a number 1 story because there are so many other stories that spring from that. But whether you sport a MAGA hat or march in No Kings protests, it's hard to deny that Donald Trump is making a long-lasting impression on American policy and history, and his political resiliency is something political junkies will be studying for decades, even after he and his administration are long gone.
Yeah, I think the Trumpster is a name we'll mention a few times in this segment. Martha Manikas-Foster, great to have you in studio. What did you have on your list?
I have a name, Pete Hegseth. His confirmation as Secretary of Defense or War, Signalgate, the Venezuelan boat destruction, the controversy over the second strike, and the ripple effects of how both Democrats and Republicans feel so deeply about this.
Yeah, really. He was a main player in 2025 for sure. Sarah Harnish, what did you have on your list as the 5th biggest story of 2025?
The United States attacking Iran. It was a show of force in front of the whole world that America is back. The Department of War is capable of things seen only in Top Gun movies. And it made it possible for ceasefire negotiations in Gaza with so many Arab nations we don't align with, like Saudi Arabia. Yeah. It was the sentence heard around the world, spoken with 6 bunker buster bombs.
Wow. And last but certainly not least, the morning anchor, Jeremy Miller. What was your 5th biggest story of the year?
We have a new pope. You know, every time we see white smoke billow from the Sistine Chapel, it's an historic moment. This one was a little bit different because Pope Leo XIV is the first American pope. Never thought I would say that. Yeah. But Bob, you and I were talking about this, the potential candidates when we were going through everything. I did say there's never been an American pope.
Well, can't say that anymore, can you? Good answer. Really good answer. And wow, what a moment in history that was at the Vatican. Let's count them down. Jeremy, since we went with you last, we'll go with you first. Number 4, the 4th biggest story of 2025.
I went with Trump's second inauguration. Again, every presidential inauguration is historic. This one was different. For one thing, 2 non-consecutive terms has only been done once before. That was Grover Cleveland. The conventional wisdom would also tell us that an incumbent candidate who was impeached twice and survived assassination attempts would only get back into the White House if they took a tour. So I thought that was pretty incredible that it happened.
Yeah. Martha, what did you have as the 4th biggest story of the year?
I actually had the elevation of American-born cardinal to become Pope Leo XIV upon the death of Pope Francis.
And Sarah loves it because he's from Chicago, you know, her old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
Go Pope. Got a Pope Leo hat today for the show. Sarah, what was your 4th biggest story of the year?
I've got to go with Doge. Doge makes major cuts to the government, and this is an odd one to pick. To use Elon Musk and a bunch of geniuses in their 20s paired with AI is pretty incredible. Yeah. It's news we've never had. Brand new.
Doge, not to be confused with Dodge. Let's make sure people know what Doge is. Department of Government Efficiency, the acronym acronym none of us will forget. I had something similar to that, but I went with the name Elon Musk. The world's richest man was front and center in 2025 from his work at Doge. Musk made headlines like few others, and his hand in shaping public policy this year was a major news event. Mark Webster, your fourth biggest story of the year.
Well, Bob, I'm just going to say the Middle East. As the year closes, we're looking at the possible end of the war in Gaza, though I suspect a lot of other folks are going to believe that when they actually see it. And also, don't forget the U.S. teaming with Israel to directly attack Iranian nuclear weapon sites. That was a major shift in U.S. policy, and it could be a harbinger of some larger scale conflicts still to come.
Hey, 2 down, 3 to go. We're counting down the top 5 news stories of 2025 with the Family Life News team. It's not often we get them all together. It's like herding cats, but we got them all in here today. Martha Manikas Foster, your third biggest story of the year.
I had as my third the big changes in U.S. immigration policy and other expanded powers to U.S. citizenship and immigration services officers, and that's part of Homeland Security. This is new, and it's widespread, and it's big.
Yeah, big on my list, too. We'll get back to it. That's a nice tease, because I think a few of us might be mentioning what you're talking about. Sarah, your third biggest story of the year.
Donald Trump takes office for the second time, and I think that we've all been busier in the newsroom since January than we have in decades. Love him or hate him, Trump creates headlines.
I had the Camp Mystic flooding as my third biggest story. The Independence Day flood in the Texas Hill Country. The Guadalupe River surging 26 feet in less than an hour. Just think about that. 27 deaths blamed on that tragedy, this major event. All right, Jeremy Miller, your third biggest story of the year.
Oh, this story should have been more widespread than it has been, but the Nigerian Christian genocide that's been going on, it's outrageous enough, but global apathy to this whole situation and plight is just shocking. We've been reporting on it, but it took a long time for this story to get any traction.
I'm glad you mentioned it, Jeremy, because as you said, it was probably the most underreported news event of 2025. Number 3 on the list, Mark Webster.
Bob, I'm going with immigration unrest. And of course, we've seen it here in the U.S., ICE raids threatening meltdowns in numerous cities. But the biggest common theme seems to be that many of those entering the West now are no longer looking to assimilate, but rather to assert themselves and take control. That's creating a clash of cultures. What was once thought of as a melting pot now threatens to boil over.
Yeah, well said, Mark. I had the ICE raids, not the ICE capades, the ICE raids as my second biggest story of the year. No acronym got more attention, guys, in 2025 than those 3 little letters. Immigration and Customs Enforcement turning into a military operation when National Guard troops were deployed to protect these agents. Few stories had as much impact or intensity as the ICE raids did in 2025. All right, that was my second biggest news event of 2025. Mark Webster, what was yours?
Well, we've touched on it already. Attacks on Christians from Nigeria and China to once unthinkable Europe, and yes, the U.S. too. There's no denying that persecution of Christians is on the rise here and elsewhere. The Charlie Kirk assassination was a tragic exclamation point on the growing persecution of Christians worldwide. Openly practicing your faith is becoming more and more costly by the day.
Sarah Harnish, number 2 on your list.
Charlie Kirk and his death. 100,000 people attend the service in person, 30 million watch online. It showed the world what Christianity looks like.
I knew his name would come up sooner or later, and it has. Jeremy Miller, number 2 on your list.
This was the most Googled story of the year by far. Charlie Kirk. This is a husband and a father assassinated for speaking his mind in the United States. The one place you should always feel free and safe to speak your mind. I think it also speaks to some of what Mark mentioned, the chasm that we have right now in government with our political figures, our public figures, among our fellow citizens. I think for some people, this incident was a wake-up call, but unfortunately, there's still a lot of vitriol that continues in our country.
I had number 1, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We'll get to that in a minute. But Martha, let's first hear your second biggest story of 2025.
My second biggest story is the Trump administration's unparalleled number of emergency requests to the Supreme Court to fast-track decisions. So during Trump's first and so far in his second term, he's made 72 emergency docket requests, whereas during George W. Bush and Barack Obama's 10 years combined, there were 8 requests.
Wow. Unbelievable. All right, guys. Hey, we've got one more to go. We're going to go around the table here. What a year it's been. Unbelievable. Every year we say that, but this year especially. I can't wait to hear what you guys settled on. Sarah, your biggest story of the year.
Mass revival. YouVersion crosses 1 billion people. That's 1 in 9 on the earth on their digital Bible app for cell phones. 22% increase in physical Bible sales in 1 year in the United States. Mass revival of Gen Z. And the shift towards faith is my top story in 2025, a shift toward Jesus.
Hey, I like that. That's a lot better than what I had. I hope it catches on, Sarah. Martha, what was your biggest story of the year?
This has been mentioned numerous times, but I have Donald Trump being sworn in as the 47th president of the United States for a second term. And as mentioned already, the first president since Grover Cleveland to serve 2 non-consecutive terms.
Yeah.
Lots ripples out from that.
Yeah, that is so true, Martha. You could take that a lot of ways. Jeremy, you're up and at 'em every morning. I can't wait to hear what you thought was the biggest story this year.
I think Sarah's was the biggest story this year. I want to take hers, but
I'm waiting for the second coming after that, right?
Yeah, no kidding. But what I wrote down, we've covered more than a few of these guys. The shutdown. This one felt different, not only because it was the longest in U.S. history. The only thing it achieved was angering the American people. A lot of anxiety for 43 days. This one really blew back in everyone's faces.
Yeah. I had the assassination of Charlie Kirk as my biggest story of the year. September 10th, 2025, a where were you when it happened moment. But what happened after that was why I picked this story. Church pews packed to the rafters, not since 9/11. She's seen this, the reinvigorated debate about free speech and that unbelievable act of courage at the funeral service in Arizona when Erica Kirk declared, that man, that young man, I forgive him. And that's why Charlie Kirk was my biggest story of the year. Mark, we saved the best for last, buddy. What was your biggest, most momentous, most impactful story of 2025?
Well, Sarah kind of stole my thunder, but I'm going to end on a positive note. My top story, revival among younger Americans. We've seen it on college campus after college campus all year, Gen Z becoming Gen J. Thousands of younger, disillusioned Americans tired of a vacuous culture that has no real answers for them, finding those answers in Jesus. So I'll leave you the words of a campus outreach pastor in Illinois I saw this year. He said, quote, "The spiritual hunger, the spiritual desire is higher than we have ever seen it before." It made that trend.
Hey, when we can end the news with good news, that's a good thing. A good thing indeed. I'm Bob Price, and if you're just joining us, this is our 2025 Year in Review special edition of the Noon Report. You just heard the Family Life News team reminisce about what they thought were the 5 biggest stories of 2025. But what about New York and Pennsylvania? What were the stories that mattered most from the state capitals in Albany and Harrisburg? Well, who better to ask than the Capital Connection crew? Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire with New York Families. Take a listen. Jason, we drew straws and you got to go first. So what did you have as your 5th biggest story of the year?
Well, it's been hard for me not to acknowledge the lawfare that has been occurring in our state under Letitia James as the Attorney General. And this Attorney General has really sought to tamp down on free speech. She has come after pro-life pregnancy centers, even the president. And lawfare seems to be one of the issues that we have to acknowledge was a major story in 2025.
Let's go to Harrisburg. Michael, what did you decide was the 5th biggest story of Pennsylvania this year?
Well, there's a story that comes over from the previous year, and that's the issue of protecting girls' sports, personal privacy, and things. That was a big issue in the 2024 presidential election, remains an issue in Pennsylvania. We still have school districts that are allowing boys to play in girls' sports, locker room privacy violations. But we saw some real positive things like the Dads Defending Daughters press conference that took place with lawmakers like Clint Owlett taking a stand for privacy and for girls' sports.
We're counting down the top 5 news stories from Albany and Harrisburg this year. A special edition of Capital Connection with Michael Geer and Jason McGuire. Michael, let's stay in Harrisburg for number 4. What was 4th on your list this year?
Well, this relates to kind of the polarization that we've seen in our society and even the violence that we've seen, and specifically what came here to Pennsylvania with the arson attack on Governor Shapiro's mansion just north of where we are here. And that points to the increased polarization, increased violence that we see in society, as well as the anti-Semitism, which was certainly prevalent with this nutcase throwing a firebomb and putting at risk the governor and his family.
Yeah, I think that's on a lot of people's lists this year when they look back at what happened in Pennsylvania this year. The fact that the governor and his family were unharmed, just amazing that could happen. Jason, fourth biggest story in New York, and why?
Yeah, similar to what Michael just referenced, I have the rise of anti-Semitism here in New York. We began the year looking at this as something that was on the left, and it is. You see those protests, you see what is happening on the college campuses, but in 2025 we began to see that there may be more of this in the right than people are realizing. And I think it's something that we're going to have to come to terms with, is there is racism, there is anti-Semitism, and it doesn't matter if you're left or right, it exists in each wing, and it's something that really we as believers, the followers of Jesus Christ, are going to have to come to terms with and to recognize and call it out when we see it.
Well said. Hey, 2 down, 3 to go. We're counting down the top 5 news stories / events of 2025 with the Capital Connection crew. You hear them every Friday during the Noon Report. Michael Gear with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire with New York Families, our most popular radio program we have, for good reason. These guys know what they're talking about. They're in the thick of it at the state capitals. Jason, let's stay in Albany. Number 3 on your list this year.
I have the prison guard strike that occurred earlier this year. The state of New York has been down thousands of corrections officers in these facilities. And so that prison strike, it was a blow to Governor Kathy Hochul, to her leadership. It's been a blow to the families, to the localities that are impacted in those places. And even to this day, the National Guard is still in these prisons. So we have folks that have regular jobs, have families back home, and yet are serving National Guard duties by serving as essentially corrections officers in these places. This is something that's never really been fully rectified. You can also expect to be a major topic in 2026.
Yeah, and who can forget those 3 weeks, I think it was back in February and March, where those corrections officers went on strike. Just a major story for several weeks in New York State, the prison guard strike. Michael, in Harrisburg, so many stories. We've already mentioned that arson attack. We mentioned the transgender thing in PA. But what was the third biggest story this year in your state?
Well, I think it's one that maybe not getting that much notice, but should, and that was the state of Pennsylvania issuing commercial driver's licenses to known terrorists or people from terrorist states, like the driver from Uzbekistan getting a CDL and then being involved in fatal accidents, or even it's being revealed that PennDOT has, through the voter registration that happens at driver's license signups, that have been giving voter registration forms to non-documented or illegal aliens. Kind of a scandal here in Pennsylvania that's not drawing a lot of attention, but has significant impact on our voter rolls.
Yeah, I know Transportation Secretary Duffy is taking a close look at that. We'll see what comes of it. But that was a huge story, and you're right, it didn't get reported nearly as much as it should. So let's get to it. Now, number 2, down to the final 2. What were the top 2 news stories of the year? Michael, let's stay in Harrisburg. What did you have on your list?
Well, I'm going to say the late state budget, which is becoming kind of old news, or old hat, I guess, a habit of the legislature here. They don't care about that constitutional deadline, apparently, in terms of getting the budget done. But the positive in that budget, and this was part of the standoff, was that we avoided the bullet of legalization of commercial sale of marijuana for yet another year. That is a praise to the Lord and praise to the citizenry who used their voice in that process. So that was a good thing, even though we had a late budget.
Yeah, saving PA from pot was on my list. I know it's a fight you have been fighting for years, Michael. Unfortunately, Jason, you haven't been able to win that fight in New York. It's legal. But what did you have as the second biggest story this year in New York State?
Well, this is a story that is very important to our organization, and that's the issue of state-sanctioned suicide. This is an issue that is not going away. Should this become legalized in our state, at the time of this recording, we don't yet know what the governor is going to do with this. But should it become legalized, it's going to have a great impact on what happens with end-of-life issues in our state. And should the governor veto it, the fight's going to be back. If she signs it, they're going to look to constantly be expanding and removing the restrictions against it in this state. And before you go too far, you look back, you realize that the whole world of medicine has changed because now you've fractured the relationship between the patient and the doctor. And so this issue of assisted suicide is a major issue that is a kind of a sleeping one late in 2025.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a huge one. I had that number one on my list this year in New York State. Michael, here we are. The biggest story, the most impactful event of the past 12 months in Pennsylvania. So many major issues this year. But if you had to settle on one, what would be your choice as the biggest story of 2025?
Well, I think I chose this one as number one. You know, it's debatable, but I chose it as number one because it takes us into 2026 as well, and that was the off-year elections, not only the Supreme Court elections and what rulings will come from this liberal Supreme Court that got retention will come in the coming year, but also then what we saw in sweeps of school boards and other things that many Pennsylvanians were just not awake or aware of the need to be involved and engaged in elections, and hopefully 2026 they'll see what happened in 2025 and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, I'm going to get engaged in the political realm.
Yeah, don't sit this one out, guys. Don't sit it out. There's too much at stake. Here we are, Jason. I could say it as well as I did with Michael. There were so many major events this year in New York State, in Albany in particular, at the state capitol. But if you had to pick just one, what would be your choice as the most significant news item of 2025?
I think it's the foothold that democratic socialism is making here in the Empire State. That was seen most clearly with the election of New York City mayoral-elect Zohran Mamdani, just the last election cycle, and he will soon be coming in to see what he will do now that he will be the mayor. But it isn't just about one man. This is something we've seen in the legislature for years to come. We are seeing it in the progressive left. We're watching Democrats that are now have a major portion of their party as becoming this democratic socialist, or at least leans that direction. And that is going to shake up politics in our state house here in the year to come and years to come. And it's going to change a lot of Americans' lives if socialism gains much more of a foothold in this country.
That is Jason McGuire with New York Families, along with Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute, counting down the 5 biggest stories of the year from New York and Pennsylvania. And that brings us to the end of this special New Year's Eve edition of the Noon Report, our 2025 year in review. We hope you've enjoyed the trip down memory lane. For the entire Family Life News team, I'm Bob Price, wishing you and yours a very happy